Kraynak.
Time has come for someone to put his foot down. And that foot is me.
Welcome to it. Weekend editions here. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. I have missed all of you, and we are already coming in off the top rope with the steel chairs as to why we are LATE. There'll be a dog up for adoption. His name is Sterling with a bad haircut if he doesn't shut up downstairs. Elijah, good to have you, man. Good to see you. Appreciate you this week, as it's been pretty much a week of golf and hopping around on one leg with the old boot. Cliff was asking, our friend Cliff from Florida, if I hit my other leg with a mailbox last night as to why we're late. No is the answer. Mr. Mark Kraynak is en route. We'll check in with him. But what's a good word, man? 49 days till kickoff. A week from Monday, we jet off to the Big Ten Media Days. So it is getting nearer, and you've got your representatives named for Nebraska. Ty Robinson, Isaac Gifford, and Ben Scott. Those are your three big red men that'll be there on that Wednesday, Nebraska Day 2, with a pretty loaded schedule. Always welcome to join us on Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Hail Varsity YouTube. Like and subscribe there. Hail Varsity Radio, Varsity Radio. You can watch and Twitter as well on KFOR. So, Elijah, what's new, man? What's shaking with you?
Well, not much. It was a busy week, so that's always good around here. Whenever you get to mid-July, to get a busy week of things to talk about. I do think you said it's a week away for you, but it's really been more than that. Whenever you think about it, you really set up this vacation for yourself, really tactically, where you have the half day on the 3rd of July, and then you get into the 4th and the 5th, then it's the weekend, and then it's a full week off. Really, like, you're working on 9 days here, which for only taking, I think, 5 true vacation days at work, it's really smart when you think about it, how you set this up to stack the vacation with the holiday. I tip my cap to you, but you did miss out on a busy week of news with everything from the addition of Coach Butler to, as you said, the 3 representatives for Big Ten Media Days. And how could we forget natural grass, baby? I think that's probably the biggest news story of the week. I say that a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but also not really, because artificial field turf has been a mainstay at Memorial Stadium, and come in 2026, natural grass will be taken over.
It is, and you go back to 1969, the last time Nebraska had grass, and they put the turf in. And I don't know how many of you, and we'll get our starting 5 shout outs here in a moment, but I don't know how many of you purchased the winningest AstroTurf in the history of college football. But when they ripped that out, you go to your local favorite Husker memorabilia store and buy a swath of the AstroTurf that was alive and well for Nebraska in the 1990s. I think they've had field turf. When did they put that in? Turf, I think field turf went in the late 90s. Okay, I think that's going to date me. But they've had to do it a couple of times. I like field turf. I think it's fine, but this is really not negotiable with Matt Rule. That's my take on it. He has talked about what it does for the players, how it provides for their health, and it's just a better surface to play on. And he has been an advocate, as he should be, for player health and safety and giving them the best. Well, you're going to have that here in 2025. I think our friend Mitch Sherman from The Athletic and his Locked On Nebraska podcast was the first to kind of broach this, that it's going to be a real deal here following this season. So Matt Rule has gone to the trouble.
Following next season.
2026.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
So Matt Rule Matt Rule has gone to the trouble of putting in grass to practice on. Well, you want to play on what you're practicing on. And I just remember the Notre Dame, Nebraska game, that trip Kraynak and I took while we were in college, and just how thick but luscious and beautiful that grass was in South Bend. And, if you have too fast a team, you just let that thing grow a little longer. And it's supposed to slow him down. And famously, Lee Corso, that's why Florida was going to beat Nebraska, because, the game's on grass. The game's on grass, and Nebraska doesn't play on grass. Florida does.
And I think that's a bit of an overplayed topic of conversation.
It absolutely was. Of course, it wasn't hell afterwards.
It was at the time, and it still is now, where people say teams play faster on field turf. And everyone always looks in the Big Ten. You look at Ryan Field at Northwestern, and you say, man, look how long they leave that grass. It slows down the fast teams. That's why teams like Ohio State go in there and start. No, I don't really think so. There's obviously, what was that? There's a night game between Ohio State and Northwestern, probably almost a decade ago now, where they really let that grass grow long at Ryan Field. And Northwestern gave them hell. I still want to say Ohio State pulled out in the fourth quarter. But I don't think Nebraska is going to have that style of grass. Like, with the amount of technology it sounds like they're putting in, they're talking about next year with the practice fields, getting that underfield heating in to make sure you have the luscious grass all year long. So you get the warm water running underneath the field to make sure it doesn't freeze up, and you get growing longer, or grass growing time longer than if you traditionally would here in Nebraska. And that's going in the stadium. You're going to get that underground drainage system as well to make sure that it doesn't get waterlogged the field and that you get the perfect amount of water on it. Like, this is going to be as close, I think, as a college field can get to what some of those NFL teams have with their grass fields, where it's really going to have a lot of technology put into it. The grass is going to be pristine most of the year, if possible. You wonder about, like, you look at some of the cold weather stadiums that you see in the NFL with the Chiefs and the Packers and the Broncos. And the one thing you sometimes see as the year goes on is that area in between the hashes gets really beaten down and brown as the year goes on. You wonder if that's going to happen at Memorial Stadium, what they're going to have there, whether or not they have some grass growing somewhere else on campus or on East Campus or somewhere that you can ship in and replace that grass in between the field turf or in between the hashes, or if anything goes wrong. I'm not sure what it looks like. They have plenty of time to discuss what this is going to look like, obviously, with that 2026 runway. As Bill Dolman said on the show yesterday, I think they're probably going to consult with the turf management major at Nebraska, which goes along with the golf I got to think about what the major is actually called, or the golf management at UNL.
Yeah. Horticulture.
Well, they have like a specific like major for people who want to go be golf pros at Nebraska. And like along with that is how you manage a golf course. And along with that, they have like a turf management field. So you wonder how they're going to be involved with this to make sure that the grass at Memorial Stadium is green and luscious year round. But at the end of the day,
give me a buffalo grass field. I know that wouldn't work, but
we got into this a little bit yesterday. Is what type of grass do you use?
You want Kentucky bluegrass? You want
fescue?
Yeah, fescue. Crabgrass. As I look at my freaking backyard.
So those are all discussions that are going to need to be had within the next couple of years, but you have plenty of time for it. And at the end of the day, I've seen people on Twitter hop on and say there's conflicting studies about whether or not grass is safer for you. Ask any football player whether they prefer playing on nice, well-maintained grass or on field turf. I think people will take field turf over bad grass. Like sometimes you get bad grass at high school stadiums, or even in some smaller colleges, you get bad grass, and that's no fun to play on. But ask any football player ever whether they'd rather play on artificial field turf or on a nice, well-maintained grass field. 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10, are going to tell you they want to play on that grass field. And that's what Matt Rule's about. He wants to take care of the players. He wants to do what the players want. And football players almost universally prefer playing on natural grass. If that's the case, put in natural grass at Memorial Stadium.
All right, we have kept you waiting long enough. Starting five here, our shout-outs, and we'll give a shout-out in the stream to our first five, our starting five, and some folks that are coming in to replace the starting five as the show goes on. Eat Beef, God love you. You are in first. Cliff in Florida. checks in. Michael from North Carolina. Michael, good to have you. Tyler, what's up? Tuck is here. Wonderful to have Tuck in. Crazy Spider Adventures. Crazy says, morning from Duke University in North Carolina, where my family, A-Dub and Jimmy at. James is in. James, say it loud. 49 days. That's awesome. Red Knight is in. Good morning. Another fine day. Why were we late? Cliff has a theory. Probably hit a mailbox with his other leg.
How about James here off the top rope?
In a foot race between Schmidty and Deion Sanders, I think Schmidty wins by half a foot. That's not very nice. Wow. Deion Sanders can still backpedal faster than I can race downhill.
And you can limp right now.
That's about right. Black Hills Brennan, good to have you, bud. Can't wait to wake up for game day on Saturday. Totally hear you there. It's a lot of fun. Elijah is in. Bring out the gimp. A quote from Pulp Fiction. I assume, Elijah. That's not good. As Brandon Vogel is with us.
And before we really get Brandon into this show, we need to hear how did you golf this week? How was the week away? I know you were on a golf course. Was it every single day you were away?
I was not golfing Thursday, but I golfed Monday through Wednesday, and then yesterday shot a 93, my best round ever. Went with my buddy Nate. I was on fire yesterday. I was hitting putts. 93 is still a garbage score, but it's good for me.
Were you hitting from the white tees or what?
Yeah, but I mean, the white and blue weren't that different where I was playing yesterday. So no, I played amazing yesterday. I'm supposed to take Junior today, but that little puke was up at 2 a.m. playing video games. So we'll see if he wakes up. But no, played great golf yesterday. Had an amazing steak, bone-in ribeye with Mark Kraynak last night, and shout out to Chef Brian Paul. Just incredible. So that's what I did. Vogues, I've missed you. How are you, dude?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm all right. I've got a stampede of puppies that we're gonna. It's just hell here. I'm fine.
Just
Do you hear them? Do you hear them?
Yeah, you can. You hear a lot of pitter patter. Yeah.
The technology that we're using has a little bit of background noise cancellation, which is helping. So it's not as bad as maybe you think it is, but you can hear a little pitter patter in the background.
Mm-hmm. It's a thundering herd. Kraynak, good to see you, bud. How are you?
Nice to see you as well. Doing just fine. Woke up a little late today. Sorry about that. It's the time change from a few months ago. It's just now taking hold. It takes a while. Something like
Vogues,
that. I don't know.
We had bone-in ribeye last night, and I had never tried scotch.
Can you believe this, by the way? He had seriously never tried scotch. And you're a whiskey guy.
I had a glass of scotch last night.
Yeah.
Kraynak handed me a firearm as well, but I said no. I'll just stick with one.
Yeah. How'd you like that smoke?
It was all right. You a scotch guy? You're more of a bourbon dude, aren't you?
Yeah, it's not the first thing I would go for, but it's probably more interesting than bourbon on the whole, and it's just you get more variety, some more interesting flavors. So it's I'm just never I don't know. If I'm at the store and it's time for a whiskey re-up, I usually go with bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah, the peatiness of scotch is a little bit, I don't know. It's a little off-putting to me. I can do scotch, as you guys say, but like whenever it's real peaty, and you know that flavor I'm talking about, earthy and it's not necessarily for me.
Where it tastes like you're drinking a campfire, sort of. Like sometimes that's not good.
Like a campfire that's burning like dried grass.
Yeah, but it's like I think there's like three main kinds of scotch, and that's just one of them, right? It's like the peat heavy type one, and then you have your blended, and you have your Islay, right? Is that something like that? I could swear. There's like three main kinds. But But yeah, I just couldn't believe you never had it at all, though, right? Like because Chris, he'll have a steak. He does fine things. His hair's coiffed. Like Scotch feels like it would be part of the mix at some point, and it hadn't been. But here's the even bigger thing, though, is a purely smoked steak.
Yes.
Never done that. Had never, ever done that.
BP for the win. He had his smoker out in the driveway.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
How long did that take?
It said 25 minutes.
Oh, okay, that's not bad.
It was more than that, wasn't it? He did it on 225.
That's my favorite way to cook a steak. We do like the reverse sear, but you smoke it up, and then right at the end, you just flash it and get that little bit of crust on the outside. Is that what we're talking about here?
I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
It was insane.
That's my favorite way to do a steak.
It was unbelievable. And it was super tender. You could just slice right through it with ease. It was, wow. It was kind of eye-opening because it's just like the opposite of what you would think, right? Like you think, especially with the steak. And what a risk. Oh my goodness. What if that doesn't turn out? You just blew how much money on a smoked steak? I don't know. It was something.
Oh, it was executed. It was 3rd down and 2, and we scored a touchdown. So it was wonderful. Vogues, a lot to get into, right? You wrote about the blue chip ratio. I want to get your thoughts there. I know we talked a little bit about. Well, we didn't talk to you about Butler last week because you were in Pittsburgh, which was awesome. Happy for you. And then 1890 and NIL with the $25 Let's Watch Practice. I wonder if you and I can start shipping in to watch practice all the time. The media member. Just swipe my card. Just swipe my card.
Find out what sort of standing donation needs to happen for that to be the case. I mean,
yes, that'd be great. But how about grass? How about grass? Tell me about grass. And Vogues, are you going to be playing this fall on turf or grass?
I'll be on turf. I'm not I like the lawn to look nice, but I'm not fanatical about it. So I'm not the grass expert here. I mean, the thing that jumps out to me about Nebraska making this switch in a couple of years, like what an investment in something that, okay, yes, you can find studies out there for both ways, but presumably it's a little bit better for the players. I think players prefer it, but if you want to take a more rigorous angle in terms of safety, grass, the consensus seems to be that grass is a little bit better. But when you think about the cost to just put in grass, maintain grass, you need an entire new staff, essentially. I mean, I know Nebraska has some people, but you're going to need more to do this. Like, this is a serious investment in basically something that, I think Matt Rule was kind of leading the charge on. So he better stay for a long time, I guess is the point. It's kind of astounding when you stop and actually break it down. Nebraska, I think, will be one of 6 teams in the Big Ten now on grass. So that's just the third of the new conference. 2 of those are UCLA and USC coming in. So it'll be interesting. I mean, it's the perfect type of July topic. When better to talk about grass in Memorial Stadium? But I think everybody here, I've never been alive for a game on grass in Memorial Stadium. So it'll be kind of cool.
Further proof, do you think, Brandon, that Matt Rule sees himself as in it for the long haul at Nebraska if he's trying to make the flip over to natural grass, something that I think he's championed? I mean, at least for a year now, when you look at the practice fields last year, further proof you think that he sees himself as in it for the long haul at Nebraska? He said it multiple times, and I think Husker fans will believe it when they see it, especially considering some of the events of the last 6 months, Trev Alberts. But do you think this is another indication that he sees himself as the long-term coach at Nebraska?
Maybe. I mean, it doesn't do anything to diminish that notion, I would say. It's just hard. You think about 2026 and how much could change before we even get there. It's just tough with any coach, like no matter how much they say it, unless you're in like a Kirk Ferentz situation. Like, Kirk Ferentz isn't going to jump for the Kentucky job or anything crazy like that. But we're a long ways away from that at Nebraska with Rule at this point. Like, he can't do anything else. Like, he can't do any more than he's done, other than emphasize it at every turn. And getting the field switched over, I think is a piece of that discussion. But at the end of the day, I think, like a lot of other people with coaches, you just have to be skeptical, because we didn't think Trev Alberts was going to be Texas A&M's AD, which is another piece of that grass and like the investment piece of it. When my colleague Aaron Sorensen spoke with Trev about grass way back in August, you kind of got the sense that they were seriously considering it. But one thing he brought up was, okay, and this hasn't happened a lot, but like volleyball day in Nebraska, concerts at Memorial Stadium, are you going to do that with grass? It's going to be harder. Like, you still can, but it's going to be more difficult to just say, yep, let them out there. Let's maximize revenue in stadium, which I think is a little bit of a turn when you combine that with, stadium renovations from where Alberts was at. Like, he was really about like, let's maximize our revenue opportunities with this stadium, to I think where Dannon is. And granted, he's only been on the job a short time.
And how about the fact of how it goes totally counter to all trends right now in athletics, period, which has trickled down to even high school levels and amateur levels. Turf is definitely on the rise over grass. It goes completely counter to that. Is there any downside to making this decision, which you're going to have to stick with for presumably, with that kind of investment, you're going to have to stick with it for years. You're not just going to try grass for a year and go back. I wouldn't think.
No, that would be that would be crazy. I mean, at the high school level, unless you're from a place like where I'm from, and even places like that, small towns, we see sometimes, like, if you can get the money for like the upfront cost, it makes a ton of sense to move to turf, because just the upkeep and everything is so much easier. So there's that piece of it. It'd be interesting to see a breakdown of like maintenance costs for at the college level. Like, I mean, you kind of almost at this point, like if you're building a new stadium for high school or below, you'd never go with grass for that reason. So it would be, it'd be interesting to see the cost difference for Nebraska to have a grass field. I'm imagining it's higher by a significant degree. So it's kind of like here and the pros is about the only place that it makes sense for a team to try and do that. And it's interesting at this time where a lot of the other conversations are about athletic departments needing to like save money, be ready for a revenue share model. And we know Nebraska's well positioned there. To add an expense is like I said, it tells you like the level of investment here.
Brendan Vogel with us from counterread.com. And Vogues, you wrote a little bit about the blue chip ratio, and I'm always fascinated by this. And there was the debate raging online, and I know one of the national sites had your blue blood teams and then your pending or in contention to be blue blood. And from a brand standpoint, it's not really arguable that Nebraska is not a blue blood. Standpoint of recency, you haven't won at a clip that's sniffing that. Really, you've got about 3, 4, 5 teams that are there. I mean, what have you done for me lately? But are you truly a national title contender? And, what's the number here of 4- and 5-star dudes you're getting into the recruiting class as we talk about that formula? But Brandon Vogel says, how many teams honestly can go in and win a national championship? I'm interested to get your number. Think about when you and I were a kid. Freak season in 1990. Colorado had kind of been building. they won a championship despite starting with a win, a loss, and a tie. They had a hell of a schedule. Then Georgia Tech. That Georgia Tech team came out of nowhere. Oklahoma came out of nowhere in 2000, year 2 of Stoops. And that was a team that got hot, that was damn good with a lot of John Blake players that Stoopsy coached up. Other than that, there's not been that Cinderella squad that came out of nowhere, not even ranked in the polls, right, that has won a championship. It's either been Bama or Clemson or, Florida State, or, just some team that's done it before. How many teams do you think can legitimately win a championship? And is there where do they come from? Is there a Cinderella story out there?
Yeah, it's a really fascinating question at this moment in time. I think in the 4-team playoff era, you're probably talking about, well, to tie it to the blue chip ratio, that came from Bud Elliott about a decade ago. Does great work at 247 Sports. And he found that every champion since, I think, 2011 had 50% blue chips, so 4 or 5 star in their previous 4 recruiting classes. And for the piece that I wrote 2 weeks ago now, I wondered if that would shift for just making the playoff, which is kind of a separate discussion. And yeah, it's a little bit lower. I went back in January and kind of retroactively found out what all the 12-team playoffs would have been with the current rules using the playoff committee rankings. Didn't drop all that much. So how many teams can win a title here in July? 8, 6, 8. Realistically, blue chip ratio would tell you there's 16 that have hit the talent threshold. But so many of those are in the SEC. I think all of them are in the SEC and the Big Ten now. Maybe minus 1 or 2, which is crazy. So half that list is gone right off the top because they're just not going to make the playoff. What's interesting recently, I think, is the last 2 years we've seen TCU get a shot at it, didn't win it. Washington got a shot at it, lost to Michigan, which was just, I think its blue chip ratio was 54%. It had just recently got there to what Elliott's work has found is the cutoff. So I don't know, are we entering an era where we're going to see more TCUs and Washingtons? I think it gets harder with a 12-team playoff. That first round bye is going to be big. In the case of TCU, which didn't win its conference title, the Horned Frogs would have had to win 3 games to get to play Georgia in the national championship game. Washington would have got a first round bye last year as Pac-12 champ. So I don't know. It's one where you could kind of convince me either way of we're headed towards more parity or it's going to stay the same. And I just don't quite know yet. But I think that group, it hasn't expanded considerably just because the playoff has expanded in terms of teams that can realistically win it each year.
Let me throw out a dirty word here. Could you talk yourself into Missouri? Could the Tigers, with their schedule and their talent and what Drink's got going there, could they be a surprise call this year?
To win it all? That would be.
I think they could get in the playoff.
Yeah, that would be a pretty big surprise to me. So they're a team that's below the blue chip ratio, which again, in some ways, the blue chip ratio existed for the BCS and the 4-team era. I don't know that it automatically changes. So the thing we're looking for here, I guess, in this year and future years is does a team like Missouri, okay, so where's Missouri slated in the SEC right now? Probably 5th, 4th, 5th, somewhere around there. So if they've got to play that first round, is there a team that's capable of playing all 4 playoff games, meaning they don't get a first round bye and they just win 4 in a row? It's going to be really, really hard to do when you sit back and actually think about it. So I don't know. Eventually it'll happen, but I'd be surprised if it happens right away in year 1. So Missouri would not be a team that I think is a realistic shot to win it. That said, you get good enough odds. You can take a flyer on it. They're a pretty good team.
Are the roster limits, the ones that are being proposed, a hedge against making any one team too top heavy? Is that ultimately what's behind it? Is like that'll increase parity because there's, fewer spots for talented players to go, and so it'll kind of spread the love instead of one team stockpiling so much talent. And does that impact or change what we're talking about here?
I doubt it. I think that's primarily nod towards controlling cost if we're in a revenue sharing model. I mean, I think you could make the argument that all of the scholarship cuts that we've seen to this point, I don't remember the years, but you went from basically unlimited to 95 to 85, were a nod towards competitive balance, and none of them worked. Like, I mean, yeah, a program like Nebraska rises and falls, Alabama, Texas, all of them to some degree, but it's still kind of like the same group of power teams that have a realistic shot at winning the title. So I think the roster limits are more a reflection of just the uncertain kind of future for, do you have a payroll or do you not, going forward, than competitive balance. Like, college football's never been a great sport for ensuring competitive balance.
What about sorry.
I should say one of the things that Troy Dannon said in his sit down with Mitch Sherman that I think is interesting, kind of goes along with this, is he says he thinks it's a fallacy to think that teams are going to be better because they're hoarding talent between 85 and 120 on their scholarship count. Like, that's not where you win games. And he doubled down and even said, if anything we've learned in college football over the past 8 years is that guys that are between that 85 and 120 on the scholarship count, they aren't going to be the ones winning you games. In fact, they're going to be the ones that, for the most part, hit the transfer portal and go help someone somewhere else, which I thought was an interesting point to be bringing up during this roster capping discussion era that we're having in college football right now.
Well, then what about
oh yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, then what about if you squish it all though into the Big Ten and SEC, right? Like, again, over time with the parity that's the disparity, I guess, that's at play right now with revenue share and all that. Like, it's still, you can still have a cup of coffee and have a great career and have a lot of exposure and all that if you go to a Florida State or a Clemson or a Utah, something like that. But over time, not really, right? Like, you're going to have to, like, if you're a real player, you're going to have to be in the SEC or the Big Ten for the most part, right?
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, like, they're going to be able to offer the most money. They have the most money now. We'll see if, and I mean, I know they're both early on in new deals, so it's a concern way down the line. But as television collapses, at least in the traditional way that we've seen it, like, are those contracts just bigger every time? I don't think you can say that safely now in the way that you could 10 years ago. So we'll see. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I didn't take the LSAT seriously enough, for one. Thought about it, but legally,
you have enough books.
I know none of them are law books. If you want to zoom in and notice. Legally, I don't even know if you'll be able to enforce a roster limitation. Would be my impression. Because how are you going to say to a Nebraska, an Alabama, et cetera, like, we want to carry 120, we're willing to pay for it. You're telling us we can't? Why? Like, what's the upside for us going along with this? Because that's the thing. Like, if you had the Big Ten and the SEC contained as like a business unit, as basically like the NFL Part 2,
right,
well, then, you can talk about antitrust exemptions and things like that. But otherwise, like, yeah, it may be the 98th best player on the roster, but you're effectively capping what you're preventing an opportunity from that person with a roster cap. And without a professional like structure, I think there would be some, I don't know if they'd be successful, but I know there would be legal challenges to that.
And one of the things that's interesting with this discussion, it's kind of in a different vein here, but give shout out to our listener, Matt, for alerting my attention to this. Not able to pull the cut. It's on Sirius XM and haven't been able to find it yet. But Nevada's head coach was on Sirius XM during Mountain West Media Days and talked about the fact that one of the things he sees in college football moving forward, one of the things he wants to develop is a relationship with a Power 2 school to say, hey, my best players say they get 2-3 good years here and they want to go play high-level football, chance at competing in a college football playoff.
Oh, wow.
I want to develop a relationship where I can send them up. And then some of those guys that are between 85 and 120 on the roster, we can have that relationship where they get sent down to me. So I develop some
farms. Wow.
Send it up, and they send me the guys that are at the bottom of their roster, and I get to develop those guys and give them some playing time. He flat out said he wants to develop that kind of relationship with one of those Power 2 schools.
Wow.
That just sent a chill down my spine. I hate everything about that, but it's probably more reality than it's not going forward.
It's a reality that guys that are playing in conferences like the Mountain West, if they're high-level players, they're going to want to play Power 2 football. Either you can send them up with getting nothing in return, or you can send them up and get some of those guys that never quite blossomed at a place like Nebraska, and you get them back in return and be able to develop those guys and get some more talent back. It makes sense from his perspective.
Wow. Yeah, it makes complete sense. I'm just kind of wistful that we've gotten to this point of, I don't know, somebody who like enjoys the G5 level and enjoys the national breadth of college football, seeing it head towards basically the majors and the minors. Not what I would have chosen.
Yeah.
Brandon Vogel with us from Counterread, counterread.com. Vogues, it's officially official with John Butler. Want to kind of get your reaction. I know we talked about it last Saturday, but I haven't heard from you. And I know this week in Counterread, you wrote about the landscape itself of college football with making the roadie to Pittsburgh, which was cool. You got to hear a little bit about the trip through the Big 12. or Cincinnati, right? Or the ACC, or what's formerly known as the ACC, as there's smoke about the Big 12 rating some of the ACC. But start with Butler and beyond the resume. I know you look with a critical eye at these things. And can this be seamless for Nebraska with the transition?
I think on the field it can. Butler, very accomplished coach, veteran coach, helps Nebraska on the field for 2024 ensure that piece of it is seamless. And at this juncture in the calendar, that's what you're most concerned about. You have a defense that's talented and experienced and was quite good a year ago. You want to make sure you're in a place that they can just go out and execute to what I think is a pretty high ceiling for that group. And I think Butler helps them with that. The long-term part of it is just, I think, things that were potentially lost in the transition from Cooper. I told Elijah on Thursday's show, behind White, I think he would have been the assistant Nebraska least wanted to lose when you look at his role. The fact that he's been with Rule this entire time, his unique ability to identify and land talent. They're all pieces of that. And it's not to say that Butler can't do those things. It's just, we were led to believe that Cooper was that good at this. And the results, I think, were showing that. I think they'll continue to show that with Nebraska as some of the guys behind the field in the seasons ahead. And he brought in a lot of guys. So there's just that piece of it, which, to some degree you kind of can't replace. And so I think Butler helps them continue he should be able to hit the ground running. His NFL experience, I think, should talk to potential players and those players that he's inheriting now in that room. And we'll kind of see where things go from there. So it's more of a helps Nebraska stay where it's at, I think, or at least where it should be for 2024 defensively. Longer term, it gets a little bit muddier, just as it would with, I think, any coaching coaching resignation and a new hire.
Vogues, what are you looking at here for this weekend with Counterread? How can folks get signed up? And please tell us about Counterread and, of course, the pod project you're doing.
Yeah, counterread.com is where you can find us. That's twice weekly newsletter on Substack from myself and Aaron Sorensen. still chugging along since we started late August of last year. Haven't missed one of those two newsletters yet. So if nothing else, we're reliable. Actually, we pride ourselves quite a bit on that, of having things when people expect us to have them. So you can head over to counterread.com, check that out. Those 2 newsletters a week are subscriber exclusive. We also do a couple of free things, so you can test us out that way, or even better, sign up for a 7-day free trial. And you can look at all the stuff that we've done that are in the paid archives. I'm interested to dig into Butler a little bit more in terms of, some of the nerdy stuff that I like to do for next week. So I'll be doing that. Erin, my colleague, is actually in Italy at the moment, so we'll see if she scares up any Husker stories while she's over there. But we have some Olympics stuff coming up that Erin's been working on for quite a while. And we'll just kind of continue to see with college football, like the news cycle is ramping up, even though we spent a lot of time talking about grass, which I enjoyed, as conference media days continue and we get ready for Big Ten media days. It's starting to feel a little bit like we've got a toe in the water, at least, of the actual college football season.
Mm-hmm. That is good. Brandon Vogel, get subscribed now at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter, counterread.com. And it is outstanding. Vogues, real quick thought about the podcast series you've been doing as well.
Yeah, thank you. I got to talking too much and glided over that. So the guys from the Common Fan podcast were kind enough to ask me to join them for each of their series. The series is called The Reckoning. Looks back at all of the coaching changes that Nebraska has made since Tom Osborne. Mike Riley was this week, so that means drumroll, the Scott Frost pod is coming on Monday. It's a good one. Evan Bland of the Omaha World Herald joined us on that one. It was an interesting conversation, as you might imagine. And then we got a little bit of a look ahead at Matt Rule and what we've seen so far from that. Michael Severe joined us on that one. So head over wherever you get your podcasts, Common Fan Podcast. You can just search it, listen to the previous ones, and 2 more coming up.
Man, I have to. It's always one more thing, right? Like somebody was suggesting this last week that every time we try to go or let a guest go, it's wait, one more thing.
Hey, by the way, what color's your room?
It's interesting talking about the Frost era now with the benefit of being more than a year removed, right? Seeing an entirely different operation and being able to kind of look back. What, if anything, has changed, good, bad, and different? What sort of maybe insight with the benefit of time have you maybe developed since the firing? How do you look at it differently, if at all, being removed from it?
Well, one thing, and it might be a little bit of recency bias since I looked at it a couple weeks ago for the blue chip ratio story. I think the talent on the team, and there's a chart in that story on Counter Read that you can see, and you can see a little bit of uptick in talent. And I think, even though they didn't get to 6-6 or better last year, I think what we saw from Nebraska defensively in particular in 2023 indicates that, I think the overall talent level was elevated during that era, and somewhat subtly. It's not like Nebraska had a big, top 15, top 10 recruiting class that kind of carried the way. So that's a positive from the Frost era that I don't think I fully realized because they were going 3-9 and 5-7. And every score was a one score loss, and it was easy to think, well, you're just not quite talented enough. No, I think Nebraska is where it should have been, and probably even a little bit ahead of where it would have been for most of these coaching hires. Not the case for Pelini, who had it pretty good coming out of the Callahan era.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Vogues, be good, brother. Thank you much, and we'll check in with you next week.
Sounds good, guys. Have a good one.
There he is, Brandon Vogel. We welcome in the Iron Horse, Gary Sharp. We
backwards kind of guy on a Saturday, Gary.
We nickname Gary the Iron Horse because he never misses a Saturday, and it's been a Lou Gehrig-esque streak. Sharpie, how are you, dude?
Good morning. Hat backwards. I've already been out and worked out. outside before it gets to be 100 degrees.
Okay.
So that's why we've gone with the hat backwards. It's
Me
also
too.
Good for you.
it's I'm preparing for next Friday when I'm a gamer. I got to have my hat backwards with the headset on. So, yeah.
Okay.
You know,
So we're working out outside. We doing parkour. We doing push-ups. What do we got going this early in the morning?
For some really odd reason, in the last few years of my life, I've taken up running.
Nice.
Just drive, bro. Just drive. It's faster. Much faster.
Your metabolism is a lot better than mine.
Gary, I need to ask a question. I know most of our listeners probably don't care about this, but whenever you do fire up the new NCAA football game next week,
yes,
first dynasty you're going to be taking charge of, and also what's the offensive scheme that you prefer? What type of scheme do you think you're going to be running in NCAA football? 25?
So I am not the famous NCAA 25 YouTuber that is on social media telling all these fan bases which team he's going to make a dynasty.
Why would he say that? Alibi. But go on.
Nebraska. But I want the wishbone or the triple option. That's what I want to play with.
Good man.
Yeah. I was going to go. I think I'm going to go the Coastal Carolina pistol triple option.
Okay.
Bring that triple option in the modern era.
Anything that includes option football. Now, I could be with the service academies, but I don't think Jamel Holloway would have gotten into the service academy.
Yeah. Story about Jamel Holloway from our late, great, dear friend, Jack Pierce told me this. And he was out, they were recruiting, and Jamel was from LA, right? I mean, he was
former Oklahoma quarterback for the younger folks.
Won a national championship as a freshman.
As a freshman,
85.
Little guy. Little guy.
But just incredible, and famously known for, as Coach Switzer said, you get one of these when you come to Oklahoma, the Ivor jacket. You're on the sideline of the 87 Nebraska game, and Jamel busted his collarbone, so it was Charles Thompson that came in and was really talented for Nebraska. So there was a slew of quarterbacks out west, right? Charles Thompson was from Oklahoma, but you have Jamel from LA, and then you had Salinesi and then Steve Taylor. I mean, those were your three big time quarterbacks from California in that early to mid 80s window, and the whole world wanted Jamel Holloway. So old Jack's out there scouting him, and Jack's like, the kid's great, but he's such I can't really use the word that it ends with whole to his teammates that I just don't know that Tom would put up with that. So we're not going to go real hard after him. And I don't know that he could play, for TO. And or Jamel wins a championship. Jamel kicks Nebraska in the junk for 3 years. And when Jack got back to his office, there's a big old life-size poster Jamel put up in his office saying, "We don't think he can play." From the other assistants. I probably screwed that up, and Jack's looking down on me right now saying, "No, it wasn't me who botched the recruiting."
So
we don't think he can play.
Early in the week, we lost a guy who I don't think Nebraska recognizes enough in Monty Kiffin. We're getting further. We're getting further and further away from the Devaney era, where Johnny Rodgers probably is immediately recognized as the Jet, the play, the Heisman Trophy winner, instead of a couple of national championships. But Monty in the transition from Devaney to Osborne, and I got to think about this. Can you imagine if we lived in a day and age back in the 80s, 90s, when we had Switzer and Osborne, and even Bill Snyder, when Bill Snyder shows up to have the Resurrection Project in Manhattan, if legal NIL, because it was going on back then, it just wasn't legal. It was all under the table. If you had legal NIL and the portal, if we were like 40 years into the NIL and the portal, what college football would have been like in Norman, Oklahoma, and Lincoln, Nebraska, with the ability to legally go buy players and to have players transfer whenever they wanted. Can you imagine Jack Pierce out on the road recruiting other people's rosters?
He'd have killed it. And that whole staff was amazing.
There would have been some unbelievable, and they were already good, but even another level in a place like Lincoln, Nebraska, if you would have had a wide open portal back in the day.
Well, think this is how good Nebraska was. And they lost out, and I'll say it nefariously, to some other programs. Nebraska had Marshall Falk. Nebraska had Emmitt Smith. Nebraska had Barry Sanders. That's three backs I just listed off. Nebraska was in on, right? Where'd those guys end up? San Diego State, Oklahoma State, Florida, right? Like last second buzzer beater. Florida gets
Donovan McNabb.
Donovan was here. That was a Danny Nee issue. That wasn't a Nebraska football. So Nebraska was that good at evaluating and just getting the next. Think about that running back room in the 80s. It was really good as it is. But you talk NIL and portal.
Yeah.
I mean, it's big time.
Are you guys going to do your part to secure David Sanders by spending $25 to go watch a practice on August 3rd?
So this has not been discussed yet.
That's something I literally brought up on the show yesterday. Do you think that practice itself is the David Sanders Jr. Because Nebraska's missed out on a lot of offensive line the past month or so?
I don't know if it is, but I would be willing to spend money for guys in the trenches. But isn't it interesting that David Sanders includes Nebraska in his Final Four? Monday is a huge announcement for the athletic department, just reiterating their connection with 1890. Then we have this practice where if you get 40,000 people, some people will go, ain't going to happen. That's still $1 million. I mean, I'm being a little facetious, but think about it. If it's cash you need or an impression you need, if you get 40,000 people to a practice, the first padded practice, I believe, and recruits around the country go, oh my God. By the way, I love the idea of this. It has been done privately for the last couple of years where if you're a big NIL donor, you get to come watch a practice, but it's not made a big deal. Now they've made it public, trying to raise funds. And they, it's not like, hey, some of the money, no, all the proceeds go to 1890. I love it. I think it's a great idea. I think you gotta think outside of the box. You got to do something different. And this is, you throw it out there, you see what the response is. And, maybe it leads to the next thing that involves 1890, which also gives fans kind of some access.
There are some big elements of this announcement. And sorry to cut you off, Chris, but it's a pretty big deal. So one, it does open up access that the common fan really didn't have before. Yep. And there's a lot of value in that because till now, a lot of the NIL efforts, there wasn't a lot of, you didn't get a lot out of it. And if you did, it was sort of marginal, right? It was just like, hey, give us money and then it'll help us get players. And you just sort of had to trust that as opposed to getting something back, getting some exclusive access, being able to go to some events. But then the way they've arranged it this time is you remember the legislation that came out a few years ago where donating to the university an athletic department is no longer tax deductible, right?
Yes. Your season tickets.
Your season tickets, you can no longer write that off, which I guess if you look at the intent of, donating to a nonprofit, you could understand maybe why that was taken away, right? It's not necessarily to, they weren't intending that you get a tax write-off to enjoy football tickets. So you kind of understand it from that level. But dude, that really, that's a big impact on people that have money and want to be able to give it away. So now if you go through 1890, you can take that tax write-off or you get priority points. Yep. You get priority points.
And you can get yourself out of the north. You can get yourself out of the north or south stadium.
Yeah. As they shrink the stadium capacity.
South Stadium's a pain. Oh, that's a tough place to sit on a Saturday.
But giving yourself or giving fans that option, I just think it's great on so many levels. Mm-hmm. There was some folks though when that came out, I'm just wondering about rolling their eyes at what the hell you're charging $25 for a practice.
Good.
Why wouldn't
they could charge $100. They could charge whatever they want.
Why wouldn't you let common fans show up and watch it we've been watching this crap for so long, and you're not even going to give us a free practice? Thoughts on that?
So the $25 is when they tried to come up with an idea of how much they should charge, they went with the pricing of the spring game.
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, you are going to get. They will make it special for you.
Yeah.
If you attend the practice on August 3rd, they will give you something for
jersey
for
giveaway,
your effort.
bobblehead, something like that, like a minor league game. What are you
be able to catch passes from Ryle. No. But the $25 is, they said, okay, what's the floor? What's the ceiling? What's the reasonable amount for us to make money, but also not price people out? And so they went with the exact same spring game pricing.
If you're the Big Ten network, great programming, right? They already do those. They already do the spring tour. Why wouldn't you put on a full practice with fans in the stands so that there's a little bit of, atmosphere? It's lively. I just see it as a model that you can try all over the country.
Because if you put it on TV now, Connor Stallings doesn't have to fly out. He can just sit on his couch and take notes.
That's true too.
Hey, I don't know about Schmidty, but there will be a lot of media that their companies will spend the $25 to be there. It's not, Scott Frost did a really cool idea back in the spring of 21. You're such an alpha male. Back in 21, after the COVID year where people were out of the stadium, they did that open practice in the spring, and it was free. You had to, put in for your ticket. You had to reserve your ticket. And I remember going because they put the media away from the regular fans, like they probably should, because we are bad. But they had 7,000, and they put on a pretty good show. I mean, Omar Manning became a Heisman Trophy winner that day. I do remember that. But that was a cool idea.
The strength of his calves alone.
Kraynak still has pictures of his calves.
Yeah, but they've been doing this. So, if you are one of their bigger donors, you've gotten to go to a practice. Now they're trying to find. Here's the thing, and I've had these discussions with people that are involved in this, whether at the university or on the collective, about finding money. We're in a state of 1.9 million. You got a football program that hasn't won. You got some momentum and you got some feel good, but there are a lot of people that are hesitant until they see something, then the faucet opens. Instead of you got to get in, then it can lead to wins. There's not enough people. There's not enough film nights. Okay. There's not enough people that they are tapping into, or they just continue to tap into, that will write a check to the athletic department and they don't think twice. They've got more people that want to know what's the return on investment.
Mm-hmm.
People say, hey, where's Warren Buffett? Buffett donates a lot of money, but it goes to the foundation. He doesn't write a check to the athletic department. And so while Phil Knight is like, I'm 86, I'm going to die soon, I need a championship, here's all the money in the world to do whatever you want with. Nebraska, over the last 10 years, they haven't had, because they haven't been winning, they haven't been able to establish the late Dan Cook, who loved Nebraska so much, it didn't matter. He was going to donate money. So they're trying everything possible to find that new person and people and group that are going to donate to the athletic department with 1890 or projects that are going to go on. And they're just trying stuff new to find that next person that's engaged before Nebraska starts winning. Because once they start winning, then people will be like, okay, I've been away for a while, I'm back. So it's quite an interesting dynamic in this state in terms of money. And are you going to donate so that you can have a better stadium experience, or are you going to donate so possibly you can retain your quarterback and maybe get a defensive lineman if you get into a bidding war of a guy you desperately want?
I think the priority, to speak for those who have money, joking. I think the priority is to go get your dudes and listen to what the prescription is from your coach and your AD. go get your players, and then the wins will follow that way, right? And then you can go into your stadium and your experience, because the experience you want as a fan is, and especially if you're a Nebraska fan, is to have big game wins, to have more of those Miami 2014 nights, right? To have more of those wins against an Iowa or a Wisconsin, right? That's escaped you for a decade. So climb up the Big Ten ladder and win some ball games with some high level talent and keep your coach happy. I mean, I think Nebraska fans would sacrifice comfort in South Stadium for wins on the field. I want to ask you this, Sharpie, about the donors, and talk to me about the fatigue factor, because these good folks that have a lot of zeros in their bank account, they have been hit up repeatedly for the last 20 years to bail out. Nebraska athletics, specifically football, with hirings and firings. And you don't have a large pool. You have a great pool of folks that make money, but it's not Ohio State. It's not Tennessee. It's not Oregon, or it's not one giant sugar daddy like Uncle Phil. These guys got to be just tired of getting that phone call, don't they?
Yeah, I think there's another part of this. You're absolutely right, Schmidty. You know, there's, and we probably all know one person who is somebody that cares deeply about Nebraska and has donated for the greater good. Here's another issue, that with the transition to a guy that is completely new to everybody in Troy Dannon, they have not been able to unlock the money in Omaha, because instead of donating for the brand, it becomes a very personal thing. I don't like Trev. I don't like Matt Davison. I'm not going to donate. I like Nebraska, but those guys are involved. Not a chance. Now they've got an opportunity here with some little bit of restructuring. They're selling the brand, and you're taking some of the personal feelings out of it. So they really, really need to open up the faucet in Omaha, because I think Omaha people are still a little bit, that wallet is still kind of shut. So they're trying desperately, because this is the largest city in the state, and there's a lot of money, and there are a lot of people here that have donated in the past that have been like, I don't like that guy that's running the show. Not a chance. Why didn't you fire Frost? He's still there. Not a chance. I'm not. Now they've readjusted how they approach Omaha with who's asking and what their pitch is to keep people engaged with athletics at Nebraska, or re-engaged, or brand new.
Real quick. Yeah. When it comes to that Omaha dollar, Matt Rule, and I saw this story about Ryan Day making the phone call to donors, not the AD, but the head coach. Matt Rule and his ability to communicate, connect, to make people feel special. Is he somebody that could help open those wallets in Omaha? I mean, the guy lives in, he has a spot in Omaha now.
His kids go to school in Omaha.
Yeah. So
yes.
Rule's role in that is my question.
Because he understands the new dynamic of a head coach is you've got to do that as well. We don't, like, I'll give you an example going back into the day. Frank Solis just wanted to be a football coach. He just wanted to do the X's and O's and hang out with his staff and hang out, most importantly, with his players. But they asked him to go out and do events, and that wasn't in his wheelhouse. He was uncomfortable doing that. And so if they said, hey, Frank, we need you to fly to Phoenix and see this guy, he would do it, but it was not his strength. I think when Trev was hiring a football coach, they probably didn't talk as much X's and O's as you would think. They talked more of the CEO part of it. And the CEO part of it is the football and drawing eyeballs and revenue. And Rule gets that part of his job, and he does it kind of seamlessly because it's just who he is. He's a good communicator. But as you can see, whether it be events in Phoenix, 1890 private events, Rule is there, and being at one of those events, he doesn't do it just for football. The one benefit of Rule is he does it for the athletic department.
Yeah.
Like this can benefit all of us. Yeah, it can benefit us on the football side, and we've got to do our part. But your commitment to the university through the NIL is for everybody. And so he gets that. And that's a benefit of having a coach like that is comfortable in those surroundings. But you got to be comfortable. Scott knew people, but he was not comfortable in those settings.
How about too in Omaha? It's your biggest population. It's over half the state if you include the metro area, just in terms of population. Unlocking that middle class.
Yep.
Right? Because the upper middle class, the small business owner that can, that wants to entertain clients and all that, or the elite folks, they're well taken care of within the University of Nebraska system, or within the Cornhusker athletic system, anyways. Of having good seats, having good tailgating spots, access to suites, access to events. But it's that middle class that till now, really the only thing you could do is kind of donate to get your tickets, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it just nothing really makes sense. But it's now about what can you give back, right? Just like make it make sense for the casual middle class fan that's like, hey, I got 5 on it. We're going after a big time quarterback recruit or whatever. I'd love to give $50, $100, but give me something out of it.
They've got an issue here, and it's when you're not winning. And I agree with you, Mark, because when you're not winning, we're all of us except for Elijah were around when Nebraska football was they were matching the title of being a blue blood, and Nebraska is a blue blood. I don't think you can eliminate people from the blue blood conversation. But now you have parents who are starting to have kids who have never been part of successful Nebraska football, or Nebraska football has not been a comfortable watch. It seems like it's always like something. And so their kids aren't necessarily growing up as diehard Nebraska fans. So it just keeps adding on to the pile of how important the next window is right now for Nebraska to start winning, whether it be for funding or just to keep it going, where you don't lose a generation that is like, well, my mom, because all of us, our parents were diehard Nebraska fans, and they passed it down because they lived it, they ate it, they breathed it. It was Nebraska football, and you were like, oh, that's what I want to do. But now where it's not a priority, Nebraska football is not a priority for as many people as it used to be. It's a generation that looks at it and goes, they're there, but and then it's the element of those people are having kids that are pretty good football players. Instead of, man, I grew up wanting to be a Husker. Well, I like Nebraska, but there's other options out there. See how multi-layered this whole discussion is.
It is, and you had too. I'll shut up in a sec, Elijah. You had the tweet, right? You had the quote tweet from Rule this week, or even last weekend. It's like, what it say, our turn. Like it showed all these teams winning championships, winning something of substance, and Rule's like, huh. It's football's turn. Elijah, go ahead.
Well, I don't think the timing on that was coincidental with all the news last weekend to try to bring the brotherhood back together in the team and say, hey, despite all this outside stuff going on, it's still our turn to go do our job, despite what happened with Evan Cooper and despite the fact we're bringing in a new position coach. I don't think that was coincidental with the timing, both a message to the team and a message to the fans. I'll set that there. But Gary, when you talk about bringing this new generation of fans on board with Husker football, do you think natural grass is the answer? Do you think that's what
grass is always the answer?
Hold on. Are you talking about the bill that's before the legislature coming up here?
The Ricketts and the Pillins of the world try and prevent us for loving our grass. Rule comes in and he says, I want grass. And we're like, I love Matty Rule. Matty Rule is the best. Can I make one more quick comment about Matt Rule on social media and reading the room?
Yeah.
By the way, Terrence Knighton did not realize Sunday when he was messing with his Twitter.
Oh my God.
That had created a storm. Okay. He was not doing that intentionally.
Yeah.
He just changed his avatar and he didn't know that there was a firestorm. So I just want to put that aside in the social media.
Read the room. Can I say that?
But he was, I'll say he was kind of oblivious because the decision on Friday wasn't just on Friday. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So he had already known about it. And by the way, so people understand.
They'd known about it for a while.
So people understand what we're talking about. That was right around the Evan Cooper news. Terrence Knighton sort of coincidentally changes his Twitter kind of up his profile to like take away all Nebraska stuff, but it wasn't. And so people read that as, oh my God, is he gone too? And it caused a whole.
So, but remember one other thing about Rule. Remember when Trev left and Rule tweeted out America, the Paul Harvey, what America needs a farmer, but it was Nebraska football highlights. So Rule very savvy on social media. Now back to the grass. What else right now, if Matt Rule wanted, could he ask for? Because Rule came in and they asked for grass. And Trev was trying to figure it out, but Trev wanted to make Memorial Stadium a year-round destination and did not see a path to having multiple concerts, things like that, if you have a natural grass surface. And they had a discussion, and they went into trying to figure out if it could work, and they were going to experiment with the practice fields. Now they got their practice fields. They need a little, tender love and care, which they're going to get before camp opens up in a couple of weeks. But Rule has always wanted natural grass. And you're at a university that's got a department that is leading the way in technology. And so they're moving forward. I think the most fascinating thing about this now becoming public is, maybe we've talked about it, but do you guys know the story about how this came up with Dannon?
No.
About Dannon had a private little Q&A with select media members that did not include any of us four. And he said, off the record, we are going to grass in Memorial Stadium. And if I hear about it, I know that it came from this room. A day after that meeting, Schmidty probably got a call. I got a call from somebody that was in that meeting that said, guess what? Memorial Stadium's going to grass. That's kind of like, yeah, I was like, that's kind of interesting. And now Dannon has confirmed it. It also coincides with they're not going to tear down South Stadium. So when they do the from the turf to the grass, and remember, they're going to try and go reverse of winning a national championship when you went grass to turf back in the late 60s and the 70s. When they were not going to tear down South Stadium, then you could put the project in and you could do what you need to do. Plus, it coincides with changing sidelines because they've got to change that sideline in terms of room over there. So it all comes together, and I think it's going to be 26. It'll be very interesting to see how it looks and how it's maintained and how it's accepted across college football. But it goes back. Matt Rule wanted it. He came up with a plan of the virtues of it. And Troy Dannon comes in and goes, yeah. And I'm here for it. But I ask you guys this: does it help Nebraska win? That's Dannon's big thing. We're not going to do something if it doesn't help Nebraska win. Does Nebraska, being a little bit different in college football, going to grass in their home stadium when they also have a couple grass practice fields and the turf practice field, does it help them win?
Well, if Rule thinks it does, or it's just safer, it helps you
keep your
more out of your players because they're actually playing, right? They're not hurt. That's Rule's belief behind it. It's better for your knees and all that. So
and it seems like Nebraska's leaning into that differentiator as, it's one thing to say, hey, we take care of our players, but it's another thing to invest in it and do it comprehensively, beyond NIL or beyond money that you're giving or cool uniforms or whatever. That the amount that they put into recovery in the new facility is unlike anything else in the nation. Nobody has anything like that, right? And so that sends a signal to recruits like, no, like, yeah, we want to make sure that your body is well taken care of with the best nutrition, with the best recovery facilities. And look at these statistics that show playing on turf leads to this many more non-contact injuries. That's why we got rid of it. It's putting your money where your mouth is. And I think that's Nebraska out on the recruiting trail. They can sell that of just like, hey, you can be a superstar athlete and then you blow a knee on that turf.
Yeah.
So maybe you shouldn't have gone to Bama or or whoever has that turf. Come here.
So it's been a while, but rest in peace. The old turf field at Nebraska that had the crown,
like the Astro turf field,
where you could stand on one sideline and you could not see the feet of the people on the other sideline. That's how big the crown was at Nebraska.
And Norman's was like Mount Everest.
One thing I want to add to this conversation that I don't feel like it's talked about, I haven't seen any studies on this, but also in a hot place like Nebraska, turf is so much harder to play on than natural grass. It is
brutal.
Like whenever you have hot summer days in Nebraska, like we're going to have today, if you were going to get out on the field, I'm not sure if it leads to more cramping, but from my own playing days, I know you stand on that hot field turf. There's one day at Lincoln High where we had to go play over there on a hot Saturday in Nebraska, beginning of September, maybe even end of August. And it was one of the most brutal games I've ever played in, just because off the field turf, it was probably high 90s. On the field turf, it had to have been at least 110 because the way black rubber radiates heat, it is just so uncomfortable and so awful to play on a hot summer's day. I'll add that to the conversation because no one talks about that. And I'm not sure that's a part of a factor in terms of helping you win football games. But oh my God, it doesn't get more brutal football.
Hey, leads to cramping.
The Beechner game. Elijah goes to the legendary Beechner game.
The JV football game, it was not that important, but my goodness, it was awful. Like in terms of
it's my understanding, real quick, as they move forward on this project, it'll be very similar to the setup at Lambeau Field.
Yep.
Where even with because you also have to remember, I mean, Nebraska is going to have to think like, hey, we're going to be hosting a playoff game in December on a grass field. We're going to be playing a couple of games every November. So Lambeau Field has the heating coils underneath of it. And even though it's not bright green when the Packers are playing a January game, it's not in terrible shape.
And it remains soft too. And you can do a lot of things, with, hey, how does this affect being able to host big events? I mean, look in Omaha, like Jean Leahy Mall has that huge green stretch of grass, and it stays like that because you have 30 feet of soil underneath, right?
Well,
you have 30 feet of technology underneath.
Yeah, you're right.
Look at Mile High. They're hosting events around.
Never on my bingo card today did I think that we would have Jean Leahy Mall and Memorial Stadium.
Hey, I'm just compared. As an example of the technology that's out there, it's not like you're just going to tear up the grass. It's like, you can, and especially Nebraska's got a thriving turf management system, in major and degree at the university. So I'm sure they'll be heavily involved.
But Elijah's right. Like Arrowhead, look at Arrowhead last weekend hosted Kenny Chesney and Zach Brown. They host a lot of different events. They've got a grass field. I mean, it can be done. And they will lean on their university to help them. And rest in peace up there. The first groundskeeper, one of the first people I ever met when I moved to Nebraska and started getting involved in the Nebraska Athletics.
Don't say Jesse.
Bill Shepard. Okay. Bill Shepard was the head groundskeeper, whose claim to fame is they were playing Kansas State. This might have been in the late 80s. And there was snow on the field, and he had to bring his tractor out during between the third and fourth quarter to sweep off some of the snow. One of the blades got stuck on the turf and ripped a piece of the turf. They had to delay the game.
Do you know if
October snow?
Rudy? Is Fortune from Rudy still looking for a job? That's the last name, right?
I don't know. Sharpie, we got about 5 minutes before Elijah's going off and doing volleyball. Recruiting.
We'll have one more thing for Elijah before that happens.
Recruiting. This is what the show's going to be renamed as one more thing.
We'll have a couple more things for you, Elijah.
Recruiting. Sharpie, a thought. I know that you've got some 5 stars that are giving Nebraska great pub right now, and that's Michael Terry and David Sanders. What's the reality? But 2 guys that are possibly close to making a decision, Bryson Weber. We'll see with the Cooper news how much of a holding pattern that is, but also Will Hawthorne from, your neck of the woods, kind of, sort of, in Iowa, Bud, with him in Nebraska and Iowa State. Christian Jones as well. I know you're plugged into West Side. What, if anything, can you predict from an announcement? Is this going to be a good weekend for Nebraska, or is this
Well,
just going to be another
I don't know
see weekend?
I don't know the timing. Weber and Hawthorne, I think, will be the next two commitments to Nebraska.
Okay.
I'm more confident on Weber than Hawthorne. Nebraska will be
Weber
in a battle.
is who? What is Weber? Who? What
Defensive
does he play?
back
Defensive
out of
back.
Mission City, Texas, 6'2",
Yeah.
180, just stud
Yeah.
athlete.
I think Nebraska is in a really good spot with him. Hawthorne, it's going to be a battle, probably 50-50. But if you had to say, hey, who are the next two that would commit, those would be the two. But I feel more confident in Weber. I don't think Terry's going to happen. The David Sanders one is kind of interesting. Nebraska has not stopped recruiting him, and he had a good visit, but you got to recruit his family. When he came on his visit, he had like 10 people with him. And he liked his visit at Nebraska. I think, Nebraska knows what their plan is with traditional recruiting, and they know that it's going to take a little bit of cash, but it's not going to take the $2 million to get a quarterback. So them being in the mix for him, I think, is a big, big bonus to Matt Rule's recruitment. And then let's be honest, Dylan Raiola. But it's, I'm not super confident on August 17th, but I'm intrigued. I'm not going to say, oh, Nebraska's got no chance, because they're in the game. Now, who they're up against, it's going to be tough because they're winning and they're sending guys to the league. But you never say never. You never know. I mean, recruiting is weird. Some kids want to go places where they can make their own legacy.
Yeah. And look at the availability of playing time too. If you're David Sanders, right? You're talking about a left tackle, which is like, outside of quarterback, probably the premier position. And you look at some of the places that he would be going and competing against. It's other 5-star top of their game left tackles. Here, after Prohaska, it's kind of your job, man. Like Nebraska's had a pretty tough job, or pretty tough time filling that with a legit tackle.
Nebraska needs to start winning. Nebraska needs to get to the point where they can sell success over sunshine.
Yeah. Nope, love it. Yeah. Sharpie, we'll let you be out. Enjoy your weekend, brother.
We got one more thing. We got a couple.
Mark's got to ask Elijah a question.
Yeah,
Elijah's got to bounce for charity.
I can quickly answer a question though.
Yeah, okay. Let's come up with a topic then here, guys. Let's
hey, you had to have something.
Okay.
Scotch or Irish whiskey, go.
Irish whiskey.
Yeah, why? Single pot distilled? You like that? That's what they all are.
I can't remember. What was the brand I saw at Omaha Whiskey Fest last year? I quite enjoyed that one.
Green Spot.
Shout out Saturday for Elijah Herbel.
Is it Green Spot?
Yes.
Green Spot's fantastic. Yellow Spot's even better.
They didn't have the yellow spot.
Saturday, September 28th, by the way, this year at the Hilton Omaha.
Yeah. Oh, that's when the whiskey thing is?
Yes.
It's
the day of the Purdue game.
Yeah, it's not going to be on a bye week, so I'm not sure I'm going to be in attendance. It was on a bye week last year, so I had the time of my life, but this year I have a job.
Okay, so the one more thing, the reason why Elijah has to leave, okay, we can say for charity, but then that sounds like he's just, rolling up with a fedora on and just being, like some sort of benefactor. But you're playing mud volleyball?
Yeah, it's a big thing in Prague every single year.
They don't go Prague, huh? They say Prague. Okay,
I believe so.
Tell me you're not from Nebraska.
I know. Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, long story short, it's a big event every single year. I believe there's 160 teams that are playing in the tournament this year. They go fill up these volleyball pits with water and dirt and create like this sloshy, muddy environment. And you go play volleyball up there with the proceeds going to benefit breast cancer research. So this is my first time playing in it. I know there's a couple listeners yesterday that were planning on being there as well today. So
have you played mud volleyball before? Because no. I did this a long time ago out at Woodcliff. You know where Woodcliff is in Fremont, Woodcliff Lakes. Anybody familiar with that? So they did the same thing, and one of the warnings they had was snapping turtles. They're just like, yo, like we filled this up for a bit. We're right by where snapping turtles like to live. Just be careful. You're like, what do you mean be careful? I can't see through the water. It's up to my knees. But that was a warning: is be careful of snapping turtles that you can't see. Like just keep that in mind.
That'd be great. Mud volleyball, and they put like animals inside of the water, like alligators, sharks, snapping turtles.
Right.
It would make it more interesting.
It totally would. Yeah.
Well, I have to.
And that's where depth comes into play. That's where depth comes into play. You know,
I have to umpire tonight, so I'm hoping to avoid animal injuries or injuries of any kind, including dehydration. I got my water bottle here. So I'm trying to avoid dehydration and injuries today, as I do need to be out in the baseball diamond. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
You're doing that too. So you're playing mud volleyball and you're umping?
Yeah, and then I got rec league softball tomorrow, so it's just going to be a dehydration weekend for one Elijah Herbel trying to.
Us three olds on the show can live vicariously through Elijah.
We do. Shout out to Mark, the listener. Mark loves the weekend edition. Saw him out in Wild Horse out in Gothenburg this week. So he said, say hi to the fellas Saturday. So that was awesome. Brennan, appreciate you. Sharpie, we're going to get you on the course soon. You and me. That'd be fun.
Who's driving?
What's up?
He asked who's driving.
Said,
hey, whose cot are we taking?
Yeah.
Sharpie, you're driving. I have been asked to never drive a golf cart again. So
update from Schmidt. One more thing here. This is awesome. Schmidt's ankle is currently broken. He broke his ankle driving a golf cart by sticking his foot out. Proceeded to rehab by taking a Western Nebraska golfing tour.
Was that recommended by your doctor?
And then put it.
I got clearance.
And then turned in the best scores of your life.
You've played the best. I shot a 90.
Increased your handicap.
Shot a 93. I met a doctor that was playing Wild Horse with us named Dr. Allen, Stanford grad, and then gives to the University of Miami.
What?
That he was just placed with us. Me and Jay Bird were golfing Wednesday, so it was just us three. And so the doctor was like, "Dude, be careful." The doctors that I talked to, because I get a follow-up X-ray this coming Friday. Yeah. But no, he Crazy Spider Adventure says fake injury.
No, it's real. Like no. I saw him yesterday. He's got a boot and it's got a D Brown Reebok pump action inside of it.
It's an air cast wheel. But no, I mean my rehab was great. I'm fine. We'll see how much further damage I did. But the Dr. Allen, he has a buddy that he wanted to know about the show, and his buddy gets him on courses around the country. So his first time in Nebraska ever was this week. So he played Wilderness. He's playing what's the rail, the new rail course?
Lost Rail.
Yeah, he played Lost Rail. He played Wild Horse. He played Mullen. I mean, he's done it all. And he really enjoyed his time in Nebraska, had some great steaks, and we just had some great football conversations about those old Orange Bowls. So good dude. And yes, I've been approved. Yeah, just an idiot decision by me, but it's worked out okay.
Hey, can I throw one more thing in there?
Please. Yeah. Gary, keep going.
So keep doing that. We need to talk about this next week, the Nebraska Football Hall of Fame class.
Yes.
Okay.
I need some help here.
I didn't see who got in. I know Rex did, but I didn't see who else.
You have Rex. You have Terrell Farley. You have
Kevin Leitner. But a guy that I want to bring up because I need some help. I'm trying to research this. Tyrone Bird was a dude.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big eight.
I think, like defensive backs, I think Mike Brown is one of the greatest players ever to play at Nebraska that does not get as much attention, probably because he wasn't a guy that brought attention on himself. But Tyrone Bird was a dude. Yeah. Tyrone Bird, I think it's Tyrone Bird, maybe Brian Washington, and either possibly Ralph Brown, guys that were black shirts for all 4 years at Nebraska.
Yep.
Tyrone Bird was a black shirt for all 4 years. Wow. We need to discuss this class next week.
So he's like your sort of like classic strong safety for folks that don't remember, precursor to Toby Wright, Troy Dumas. Nebraska had some big, and so now it's all relative. I actually don't know, but I don't know exactly what his weight was.
He had to be 6'2", 6'3". He was a missile.
If you forward him to today, he would seem like a 6'3", 220 type safety. I mean, he would be today. Yeah, what they want Javen Wright to be. Yeah, right. And Toby Wright.
Or you remember back in the day, Nebraska on their defense had the rover position.
Yeah. And these were dudes that would fill a hole like middle linebacker style, right? And have no problem doing
against the run.
So
no problem.
Ironically, they all kind of wear the same number. You went and Tyrone Williams was different, but
Bird was 8, right?
Yeah. Let's fast forward to this year, and he wears 8. Deshaun Singleton is that guy.
Okay.
That's big enough that'll come up. Because look at the time that he played before he got injured last year. What did one of the big things he did? He'd be able to come up and fit in the slot in the run game. I mean, you got a guy who was playing safety that had a couple of tackles for losses. Remember how good Deshaun Singleton, before he got injured against Michigan, which is crazy. It was the second play of that game against Michigan. How good he was.
That was a cheap, dirty hit.
Remember, he was the previous 4 games, how good he was against the run.
He was the best player on that defense, I think, in the first 4 games of the season.
Absolutely. And if he is fully healthy, watch out.
You remember, and
I think he is.
Now he was JUCO transfer too, right? He was at a and he's also a
Syracuse too before that.
No, he was straight to Hutch, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
Yeah, and now, but he's also a case of nutrition weight program because he was slight. He was a smaller, skinnier guy coming out of JUCO. Now he's a big safety.
Yeah, when people people go to if he's at the road race tomorrow, look at him. He's cock diesel, man. There's a reason why Rule last year towards the end of camp, and I remember the room went, whoa. Remember Rule said that guy's an NFL guy. And we really didn't know much about Singleton. And then we saw him play and you went, hello. Yeah. And I think he's one of those players that might be a sleeper because we kind of forgot about him after the first 4 games and he was injured. And, then the season kind of got all wonky. But him back, and they made sure that they did not rush him back. Man, he could be a huge asset in the defensive backfield.
Hey, one more thing here.
Dude, gotta rock.
What you can we can just leave this. Terrell Farley. I know Terrell Farley makes the class, and I would say out of Nebraska's there's no comp to Terrell Farley. I'm not sure there's a comp in college football, period. I can maybe think of different position, but maybe Honey
Tremaine Mack of Miami is the only other comp.
Maybe just a guy that played so freely and was so athletic and just made so many off-script plays that were explosive as a defender.
And was
Troy Polamalu comes to mind, like that type of dude.
T. Farley was a terrible practice player because he just kind of played the game on instinct. I'll leave you with this, and this is a great way to get out of it because Elijah's car is running in the parking lot.
Yeah, I'm already going to miss the first game of the tournament. That's okay.
Oh, just you said 9:50, and I miss. You'll speed. Who cares? You're Elijah Herbel. State Patrol.
Because of us? Because of the extra 9 minutes?
Maybe.
No. Okay. We're okay. Fine. Quick story here. This will make you laugh. You can tell your friends. So Terrell Farley. The only time he was ever up front at a Nebraska Tuesday press conference, he said one of the funniest things and then said even a funnier thing and got banned from ever being up front. Remember he blocked a punt against Kansas State?
Yeah.
Down in Manhattan?
Yeah.
Okay. So he had a huge game that day. That Tuesday, they bring him up front. First time that Terrell Farley has been in front of the media. And Terrell, now he's a radio guy. But back then, he wasn't real comfortable talking to the media, even though he would, but he wasn't a great interview. So he sits up there and he got, everybody's going, hey, what about that punt? And he goes, that hole was so wide open, 2 fat women could have fit through it. And there was the uncomfortable laughter in the room. And then he gets done with his upfront session. Somebody else comes up. They answer some questions. Chris Anderson, who was the sports information director at the time, brings Terrell Farley up, makes him sit down because he had to apologize. And he goes, I just want to apologize to all the fat women out there.
Oh, that's too good.
On that note.
Sorry I offended. Sorry you're husky.
Apologize. If Charles Barkley says that, Charles Barkley gets a raise on Inside the NBA.
He was one of a kind. That defense to win the national title in '95. People talk about the offense, man. That defense, they had dude after dude after dude.
That's good. Sharpie, we'll talk soon, brother. Thanks for the time this morning.
Always fun. I enjoy it. Elijah, good luck today.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, good luck, man.
That's the
snapping turtles like worms, according to one of our comments here.
Mark Kraynak, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt, Weekend Edition, Hail Varsity YouTube, Hail Varsity Twitter, @H Varsity Radio. Follow along. We'll talk Monday. Thanks.